Hello there. Welcome back to the booth here at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. That's Luis Scott Vargas. And this is Paul Cheon. It is our pleasure to bring you coverage of the finals. Gerry Thompson making an improbable comeback there in the last semifinal match. Luis Salvatto cruised pretty easily to his seat. It's going to be Luis Salvatto on Lantern, or it's going to be Gerry Thompson with his Bedlam Reveler deck. We're going to find out right now. Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Paul Cheon and Luis Scott Vargas, and we are all set for the finals. That's right. This is it. This is going to decide who gets a trophy, who gets all the money. And let's take a look at our players. First up, Gerry Thompson from the United States of America. Take a look at Gerry here. He is ready to rumble. Gerry has brought to the table a pretty cool deck here, utilizing some perhaps underutilized cards in Modern. On the other side of the table, Luis Salvatto. This is his second Pro Tour top 8, and he has Lantern control. Guys, walk us through the matchup. Paul, you've played a lot of Lantern in your day. Would you be happy or sad if you released Salvatto and saw the list that Gerry's running?
I think Luis, at least in the pre-boarded games, is going to be a small favorite here. You know, Gerry Thompson is running a lot of removal spells in the main deck, and oftentimes those are going to be stranded in his hand. But he did express some concern about kind of some of the sideboard options that Gerry Thompson had access to.
All right, well, a good start here from Luis Salvatto. He's got Pixels of Pandemonium.
Your turn.
Really needs to find a Lantern here soon.
Yeah, the bridge and the Lantern are the pieces of the equation that he doesn't have. He has two. We call these mill rocks. Allow you to either exile or mill your library or your opponents to manipulate their draw steps. But the Lantern of Insight is how you know whether you'd like to do that or not. He doesn't have one of those.
And note that Luis is not cracking that Mishra's Bauble right away. What do you think he's waiting for, Paul?
It looks like he's waiting till he can at least get his third mana, so that he can actually, if he draws, for example, an Ensnaring Bridge off the Bauble, he can actually play it right away. And wow, boom. he finds a Lantern here. He's really just hoping that Gerry Thompson does not have in hand the 3 copies of Kolaghan's Command, which would allow him to actually interact with Luis's either his Lantern of Insight or his Mill Rocks.
Now tell us about where we're at as far as the combo goes, because there's no Ensnaring Bridge on the battlefield right now, yet Luis still has the ability to manipulate the top of Gerry's library.
Yeah, with the combination of Lantern of Insight and Codex Shredder and or Pixels of Pandemonium, Luis can continue to just kind of sculpt the top of his deck and find, you know, either additional mill rocks to keep looking for that Ensnaring Bridge, or you know, just find the Ensnaring Bridge by itself. He can also make sure that Gerry can't find answers to, you know, this combination of cards.
And based on the deck list, like Paul said, the only thing that Luis really cares about is Kolaghan's Command. There's basically no other card that in itself is a problem. Of course, cards like Faithless Looting or Bedlam Reveler can draw multiple cards at the same time. Simon touched on that in the pre-show, but in terms of which cards actually do something, it's really just Kolaghan's Command.
Yeah, and the nice thing here is, you know, there are a few ways for Gerry to actually get out of this. One of which is a card like Faithless Looting.
There's an Ensnaring Bridge on top of the library for Luis Salvatto. That was his draw step for the turn, and this one could be over before it even gets going.
Oh, yeah. Gerry is in a ton of trouble here. He doesn't have the multiple ways to actually dig through his deck. Cards like Faithless Looting and Bedlam Reveler allow him to potentially see multiple cards, which can help kind of stymie the lock here. So Gerry is in a lot of trouble. Luis Salvatto needs to empty out his hand.
Gerry says, I'm going to get in while the getting's good. He's got about a 1-turn window for those spirits.
Yeah, and the Pixels of Pandemonium means cards like Faithless Looting is not even an out, because if a Faithless Looting is on top of his library, Luis can actually just exile it instead of, you know, if there was a Codex Shredder on the battlefield.
I need to like draw all the lands together, and you both Kolaghan commands.
Yeah, but like you have 2 things though, right?
Yeah,
so like
1, 2, shuffle.
I think Gerry's trying to figure out if he can just scoop.
You know, honestly, Gerry is asking,
so
am I...
people understand that I can't win.
Okay, so Gerry wants to actually concede this game. Wow.
Gerry actually asking Rashad Miller so I can concede and people will understand that I can't win. And that's the truth.
That is
Gerry
great. Gerry Thompson, very familiar with the matchup and how it's going to play out, and how unlikely it is for him to actually come back and win this game.
I'll just concede. Like, you know,
No,
if
I
I'm
know.
locked, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, once Gerry says, look, once I'm locked, I will concede to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess since you had.
And that's really reasonable.
So-
You know, games of Lantern can take a very, very long time, especially because its primary win condition is to actually deck your opponent.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah,
And even though this match is untimed, it's the finals of the Pro Tour, Gerry still values the actual time he has on this planet. And playing a game of Lantern where he is not going to win is not how he chooses to
Perhaps a
spend it.
night out in Bilbao. So that means that with game one behind us, we're going to move on to game two. There will be no sideboarding for this game. We're playing best 3 out of 5 here in the finals. We're going to take a short commercial break. We'll be back with more after these messages.
Up your game with Ultra Pro Magic the Gathering accessories. Find the best Magic art on card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and more. Visit ultrapro.com to learn more and find a retailer near you.
So Magic the Gathering Arena, we chose that word arena very particularly because an arena is a place where people gather, where people come to compete, where people come to spectate and cheer on their favorites. It really is a place where the whole community can come together and experience the very best of what Magic has to offer.
And welcome back to the feature match here in Bilbao, Spain. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Paul Chion and Luis Scott Vargas, bringing you coverage live of the finals here from Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan. We had a very quick game one. Again, this is not the time to step away to go grab a snack. This could go quickly. And the first game did. It went in Luis Salvatto's direction.
And Paul, as someone who's played a lot of Lantern, do you think Luis Salvatto took a strategic mulligan to make his ensnaring bridges better?
I don't think that was the case, especially in this matchup. There are matchups where ensnaring bridge sometimes isn't fast enough when you play against really aggressive decks, but Gerry Thompson is not the quickest of decks, so I don't think that was part of his plan.
This is a bad start to the finals if you're sitting in Gerry Thompson's seat. He's now mulliganing to 5 after losing that quick game. And Luis Salvatto looking better and better by the moment to try to capture a championship trophy.
Yeah, Gerry really needs to find some cheap interaction with a threat. I think, you know, this just kind of the ideal draw for Gerry in this matchup is something like a turn-one Inquisition or Thoughtseize followed by a young Pyromancer.
With a Kolaghan's Command safely in hand, Actually, what we talked about before the match was that Gerry doesn't want Kolaghan's Command in his opening hand, but he also doesn't want it too far down so it gets Lantern milled. He wants it like turn 3 or so.
Yeah, he wants to like specifically draw Kolaghan's Command turn 3 before the lock actually happens.
Thread the needle, as it were.
Yeah.
That is one of the many things we talked about before the match. Gerry's kept his 5.
Oh.
And let's take a look at the opening hand here for Luis Salvatto. There's looks like nothing on turn 1 from Thompson.
All right, so Luis Salvatto has both Mishra's Bauble and Lantern of Insight here. You can choose to play that if he wants right now. Choosing to get a little more information. If he hits if he saw maybe a fetch land on top or something, he could be maybe tempted to play the Pithing Needle on the appropriate fetch land, especially because Gerry Thompson has mulliganed down to 5.
And part of the reason Gerry was able to reveal that young Pyromancer is that Gerry did scry. So he already knew it.
What is he naming here?
Well, we'll find out in a second, won't we? There's Pithing Needle from Luis Salvatto. There's that Pyromancer from Thompson. Passes a turn back. It's Bloodstained Mire.
Which Gerry does have in hand.
It's going to mire that card in his hand.
Wow.
Nice read, Luis Salvatto. And he's going to go ahead and take out the Pyromancer before any value can be accrued from it as well using Abrupt Decay. So, boy, another great start here for Luis.
Yeah, and if you notice, he actually drew a Whir of Invention. I think he might be missing the 3rd blue source, but he's got the Lantern as well. So if he finds that blue source, he can look for a Mill Rock and actually just start locking out the game as early as turn 3.
I think the Whir is not long for this world, though.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, there it goes.
And
Collective Brutality from Thompson.
Bedlam Reveler, very ineligible to be taken by Inquisition of Ghostlight. So
Yes. But Bedlam Reveler, it's going to take a while still before Gerry can actually get that Bedlam Reveler onto the battlefield.
Luis just playing this really well.
You just wanted to say that.
Well, I didn't have any other opportunities to say that this weekend. Because I didn't do coverage, is what I'm saying.
Oh, that's
right.
what it was, right? Okay.
Right.
Luis deciding to crack the bauble and really hoping to find a Mill Rock here. It looks like he actually found another copy of Whir of Invention.
He did, though he's going to be unable to cast everything he wants in the same turn.
Oh, swing and a miss.
Big.
Reveler miles off from being able to be taken with Inquisition, but also from being able to be cast. That could change that dramatically, though. Faithless Looting goes into hand for Thompson.
Gerry now using Lantern to his own advantage. He can sacrifice Marsh Flats to shuffle away that swamp if he so chooses.
Nice. He's going to go ahead and keep it on top, though.
Yikes.
Remember, we're in game 2. This is still pre-sideboard, so cards like Terminate are going to be in the library for Thompson, even though he'd much prefer to not have those there.
Drawn the 2 cards, yeah, you do have that flipped up.
Oh, just a tad late on that Thoughtseize. If he had drawn that on either of those draw steps, he would have been able to snag that Whir, but Luis Salvatto is about to establish the Lantern Lock in a second here.
So he's going to have the minimal pieces, right? He's going to have the Lantern plus a Mill Rock.
Plus 1 Mill Rock.
Okay. But since he's facing no pressure from Thompson at the moment anyway, the Ensnaring Bridge can come later on.
Yeah. Ooh, I was actually thinking that Luis might have gone for the upkeep Whir of Invention there because it is an instant and he knew he was drawing a River of Tears.
He's actually going to stay patient now, though. He sees Codex Shredder on top of his library and says, well, I'll just draw that next turn.
Yeah, I did read on one of those slides that you can use Whir to shuffle your library on upkeep.
Yeah, I didn't know until I read that slide, so thank you for the update.
Salvatto has done that multiple times this weekend, but yeah, not this time.
So now does he go for the Whir here?
Well, his hand is forced because of the Thoughtseize.
Yep.
I mean, either he Whirs and gets the Shredder, or he
gets a draw step
gets
and
the
a
Whir
Whir.
taken.
Yeah.
So it is slightly better just to Whir here.
Definitely.
Okay.
And probably just going to get the Shredder that's right there. But, of course, that maintains his draw step for next turn.
Yeah, I think he's just kind of deciding whether or not he wants to get either a Codex Shredder or a Pyxis of Pandemonium.
Sure.
What is the advantage of Codex Shredder versus Pixis?
Well, Pixis means that anytime there's a card like Faithless Looting, he can actually choose to exile the Faithless Looting from Gerry Thompson's side, because Faithless Looting allows you to dig deeper, meaning that you can sometimes spike a Colligan's command that might be 2 cards deep. But right now, I think Luis is more interested in sculpting his draws, which Codex Shredder helps with a little more.
Yeah, also, you know, Codex Shredder can help get him something back from the yard. We've seen him activate that multiple times this weekend as well.
Shredder.
Oh boy, Shredder number 2. And here's Pithy Needle as well. That's going to prompt Gerry Thompson to crack Marsh Flats immediately, knowing that if he lets it resolve, Luis could name Marsh Flats and Gerry would never be able to use it.
So one thing going for Gerry here is he's going to be able to cast Bedlam Reveler next turn. He's got 4 instants and sorceries in the graveyard and 4 lands and a Bedlam Reveler. So he's going to get a fresh infusion of cards, and he really needs to hit 1, maybe even 2 Kolaghan's commands to win this game.
Right.
Because once the mill lock is established, once there's a Lantern and multiple Shredders, even though Gerry has a Bedlam Reveler in play, Luis can mill himself over and over again to find Ensnaring Bridge or one of the other copies of Word of Invention, which will not take that long. Also, enough lands, you can do exactly what Marshall mentioned, which is sacrifice Codex Shredder to return Word of Invention to your hand.
Yeah, and there currently is no hidden information. Now that the Lantern is in play, when Gerry Thompson just plays out the Bedlam Reveler, Luis will know exactly how to play around that Reveler. Did he draw multiple copies of Kolaghan's command off this Reveler? Did he find, you know, Faithless Lootings?
Okay, 0-3. Is it the same time, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, wow, okay.
Fatal Push is all you can see. No targets for that in Salvatto's list.
Yeah, and currently Luis Salvatto is sitting pretty at 20 lives, so he can afford to take a few hits here. I think he really wants to get that extra Shredder going, and then at some point, find that Ensnaring Bridge.
Yep.
He named Liliana. Very little guesswork here for Salvatto as well. Remember, the players get to look at the deck list, so he's going to know the one-ofs, the stuff that actually matters down to a T.
Yeah, the only card that Gerry really has to interact with Luis at this point are those 3 copies of Kolaghan's commands.
Yeah, he's desperate for those.
All right, so he's choosing to be more aggressive here because Luis currently doesn't have the Ensnaring Bridge yet, so he just needs to find. Oh, well, there it is.
Just as you said it, Paul, an Ensnaring Bridge
I was all
appeared.
set to readjust the advantage bar, because if Luis missed this turn, then this would be a close game.
Yes.
But he didn't. There's a bridge in play.
And now we're effectively in the same position that we were in the first game. The only difference is there's no Pixis of Pandemonium. So Thompson should probably not concede this one in case he finds Faithless Looting and might be able to do something.
Yeah, so he's going to flash back this Faithless Looting, and it's possible that Kolaghan's command is hiding behind that Bloodstained Mire. And if it is, he can get rid of that Ensnaring Bridge and attack. So that is the hope. This card needs to be Kolaghan's command or another Faithless Looting. Oh!
It's a Lightning Bolt.
So now it's going to get further and further out of reach. Ooh.
There's a Bedlam Reveler on top of the library.
But of course, the Codex Shredders mean Gerry Thompson is not going to be drawing those Bedlam Revelers. So at this point, the hard lock is if Luis finds a Pixis of Pandemonium, meaning that you know, he can prevent Gerry from, you know, looking deeper with a card like Faithless Looting.
Combat. Go.
So Luis Salvatto tantalizingly close to completely locking this one up here in game number 2 and giving himself a brutal 2-0 lead over Thompson. Oh, there's one of the Kolaghan's commands, but that's not where he wants it. Away it goes.
So now only 2 Kolaghan's commands left in Gerry Thompson's deck.
And you see, this is what's happening. Codex Shredder is going to get sacrificed to go find Whir of Invention. And that's going to find Pixis, and that's going to do it. That's the exact same scenario that we saw in the first game. Pixis plus a Mana Rock, and that's game going to Luis Salvatto, who is now 1 game away from becoming Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan champion.
Tap it out.
Okay, so this is critical. We are now moving away from the pre-sideboarded games and into the post-sideboarded games. Let's look at Luis Salvatto's sideboard and see what he's going to bring to the table to help deflect the things that Gerry's going to bring to the table. What do you guys like out of the board here for Salvatto?
So I think Luis is interested in potentially more hand disruption. I could see him bringing him something like a Collective Brutality. There's also those 2 copies of Leyline of Sanctity, which is really nice if he has it in his opener, because one of Gerry's main forms of disruption is to cast a turn 1 hand disruption spell, which Gerry has 7 of. I also imagine he's going to bring in the 2 copies of Welding Jar, as he wants to really be able to protect his ensnaring bridges, and he should expect Gerry to bring some amount of artifact out of his sideboard. I could also see Abrupt Decay being boarded in, just as a way to deal with, a Young Pyromancer or cards like Liliana of the Veil.
This is the important one. Gerry Thompson's the one who's got to win 3 games in a row, and you have to figure he has something to help shore up this matchup at least a little bit in his sideboard. What are the tools?
Well, he's got 2 copies of Wear Tear, which certainly come in. The Destroy Target Artifact is just a great mode for here. Terror is actually relevant too. Destroy Target Enchantment can take out Leyline or Search for Azcanta if Luis brings that in as well. 3 copies of Surgical Extraction actually offer Gerry a lot of kind of like interesting outs where he randomly snags a bridge with a hand disruption spell and then exiles all the copies of bridge with Surgical. I actually don't think Luis can win if that happens. So Gerry has the capability of essentially a turn 1 kill if he draws the Surgical with the right cards. And then he's got Molten Rains, Liliana of the Veil, Fulminator Mage. These are cards, and Ghost Quarter. These are cards that aren't that good, but Gerry's got a lot of cards he wants to take out. He wants to take out Lightning Bolt. He wants to take out Fatal Push. He probably keeps in Blood Moon, but he wants to take out like Dreadbore, Terminate. Like, he's just got a lot of dead cards, and these cards are upgrades to those cards. Because Lantern is a somewhat resource-intensive deck, there's a chance you can like Molten Rain one of Luis's lands, and he can't cast his Whir of Invention.
Yeah, Luis did say that he was a little bit concerned about actually the 2 copies of Blood Moon in Gerry Thompson's deck. Because as you saw, he actually lost one of his games against Ken Yukuhiro, where he played a Blood Moon and he was unable to cast Whir of Invention.
That's right. Curious about, so we talked about the type, which of the cards may be coming in, may be coming out. But matchup-wise, does Gerry have the tools to shore up this? It looks like a horrendous matchup based on the first 2 games.
Well, part of the strength of the Lantern Control deck just in this format is its game 1 percentage is pretty good.
Okay.
It's got a lot. It plays against a lot of decks that just can't beat a single ensnaring bridge. Gerry's deck's not quite in that position because of the Kolagon's commands, but things get better for Gerry post-board. And I think that's true across the board for Lantern. It almost never gets better post-board. It almost always gets worse. It's kind of like Affinity. That said, it's not as extreme as Affinity, and in this case, I mean, I think Gerry gets some advantage here, but is still overall not super happy about the matchup.
Right, just looking at kind of the cards that Gerry's bringing in, I mean, they're okay cards, but they're not like the really high-impact, heavy hitters that you expect when people prepare for a match, an artifact matchup like Affinity, right? I think Gerry already has a reasonable Affinity matchup, given that he has Lingering Souls in Kolaghan's command, and he's just like, I don't need more for that matchup. So you know what? Maybe I'm just not going to have anything for Lantern Control. It might be a rough matchup. Cards like Stony Silence, Shatterstorm. He doesn't have anything on that level.
Yeah, the wear and tears that we mentioned before, are likely to just be shatters, right? Which is fine. I mean, you do need to kill the bridge, but also play draw, I think, is going to be interesting here. Luis, you mentioned the potential for kind of a turn 1 kill. Something like Thoughtseize You, take away your bridge and then get them all with Surgical Extraction. But of course, that's something that's a little bit trickier on the draw, especially, again, I keep going back to these niche scenarios like the Leyline of Sanctity, right? Like that thing comes down and bricks that whole situation or forces Thompson to find his wear and tear.
Yeah, I think that's one of Gerry's actual best routes to victory. Hoping Luis doesn't have a Leyline of Sanctity and hoping that he has an Ensnaring Bridge in hand and also having the hand disruption to go with the Surgical Extraction. So all the stars have to align for this all to work out. But I think that's really like, his best route to victory here. It seems like a really, really rough matchup. But, in the pre-boarded games, another one of Lantern's biggest strengths is because you get to strand a lot of just the removal spells that a lot of people have to play to deal with, one of the big decks of the tournament. For example, humans. You need to play Lightning Bolts and Fatal Pushes, and now Gerry gets to upgrade those into actual relevant cards.
Gerry has found himself in this position before. In fact, in the semifinals, he was down 2-0 to Pascal Viren, and somehow, some way, pieced together 3 games in a row to push forward and find himself here in the finals. But it ain't easy to do that back to back. He really has his hands full here.
Like starting 0-2 and then winning.
He looks like that's exactly what he's talking about.
My last 2 matches was 2-0, 2-2,
yeah.
3-2, so I'm not afraid of that.
He's like, I'm just going to do it to you too, Gerry, even if you win the next 2.
Sounds like they're both just kind of spotting Gerry the next 2 games here.
Do you think they're going to play them or just go to game 5?
I assume they'll probably play them out.
2 mistakes in game 3 and 4, I could win both games.
Oh, wow. Don't do that.
Yeah. But one time I play a colorless land instead of an ice land, and
Yeah.
then he discard me the color, and I can square.
Yeah.
And the other one, I pitting needed a random land, and he finished me.
You know, it's nice to see them just having these
Finding 20 cards.
Yeah.
20 of
friendly
them.
conversations despite being in the finals of the Pro Tour.
8 tunes.
Oh, you could have also lanterned his hollow one away.
Yeah,
but,
yeah, I
yeah.
forgot that. Yeah, but he has in that spot a lot.
Gerry was, of course, watching Salvatto play. And Salvatto's actually right now kind of in confessional here. He says, look, I made some mistakes and I lost games 3 and 4, and I could have won both.
Good luck.
But he said he played a colorless land. I remember it was an Inventor's Fair that he played, and it shut him off from triple blue. Okay, looks like players are ready to go with their opening hands. How does this look, Paul?
Doesn't look like he has enough artifacts to actually turn on that Mox Opal.
Also, double Whir of Invention.
Okay.
Right. This looks like a
Little
mulligan to
clunky.
me.
He actually had too many of his kind of high-end cards, his 3+ mana cards. So he's going to mulligan, but Gerry Thompson did keep.
Did Gerry have the turn 1 kill?
I'm curious.
Well, we have to look at Luis's hand first before we can determine that.
True.
Luis is probably going to mulligan the 6 and scry to the bottom, from my experience.
Oh, right.
Just Luis things.
Is that what happened to you at the Pro Tour?
No. I'm mulligan to 5 and scry to the bottom.
Wow.
He says this is better.
It is much better.
That is much better, isn't it?
That is a great starting hand.
Now, there's no bridge in hand, but there is an Inquisition of Kozilek here from Gerry Thompson.
And I think that he does not care if he gets Inquisition back. He's got double Pyromancer as the only selectable cards, assuming that Inquisition's about to vanish. So where does that leave us? Does that leave us at just taking Lantern of Insight?
Yeah, I think that's the card that I would take. It makes the most sense here. Luis can respond with, I guess, a Spire of Industry with a Mishra's Bauble and an Inquisition, but he still needs to find a blue source for that Word of Invention.
I just don't think you care about Inquisition here, and you're a little far away from Word of Invention.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lantern of Insight, the only of the combo pieces in hand.
I think one of the more important cards in this matchup for Luis to draw that, you know, if he actually draws it or has it in his opening hand, is Academy Ruins.
Oh, sure.
Look at Gerry Thompson's way to interact. He just really, you know, relies heavily on this hand disruption, and Academy Ruin just kind of negates a lot of that.
So there it is, Inquisition of Kozilek right back at you. Only one target, Young Pyromancer. There happens to be 2 of them in hand, but it's the only thing he can choose. Gerry's going to do the work for him, put it in the graveyard, leave him with a Bedlam Reveler and 2 lands in addition to that other Pyromancer.
Your upkeep.
And your upkeep, I want to see what you got going on.
And so the reason why he's doing this on Gerry Thompson's upkeep is that if there's a hand disruption spell on top, and let's say Luis wants to protect the card on top of his deck, the draw doesn't trigger until Luis Salvatto's upkeep.
Go.
And it's just going to be land Young Pyromancer, go.
Yes.
Go from the turn.
Wow, he found another Lantern right away, and he's got 2 copies of Ancient Stirrings in his hand as well.
Yeah, so I imagine he's going to lead off with the Lantern here to see if he wants the card on top. If he doesn't, he's going to fire off that Ancient Stirrings to look for a Millrock here.
But if he finds one here, it's starting to look pretty good for Salvatto.
It's okay, but
there's a bridge.
There is an Inquisition of Kozilek on top of Gerry's library.
Right,
so
of course. And in order for Luis to interact, he would have to actually sacrifice his Lantern.
Right.
That doesn't seem great,
At
does
this
it?
moment, this is revealed also?
No, you're looking at the top 5
Ah,
cards.
okay, yes.
Somehow it's Thompson explaining the interaction to
Yeah, I'm
Salvatto.
surprised that interaction hasn't come up.
Yeah.
I need to know which one is yes.
What does Moto do for you?
I don't
Because that's definitely right.
Yes. but not always.
That's the joke. Yeah.
Luis could also just take something like the ensnaring bridge. Actually, no, that leaves him very vulnerable to the combination of Inquisition of Kozilek plus the surgical extractions that he's been so afraid of. So I actually don't think he's going to take the bridge there because that
It just exposes it?
It could just be, yeah, it could just be a disaster.
I mean, he
Mock Temple's kind
knows
of
he'd
interesting
lose
because
it.
it's the blue for
Whir?
Whir of Invention eventually, and also lets you play 2 lands in the same turn.
Oh, and there's the Academy Ruins.
Yeah, you mentioned it. That could make the window close quickly on the plan that Gerry Thompson has. Molten Rain, and he's excited about it.
Molten Rain.
Some 6 sideboard tech.
Now, this is one of those cards that Gerry brought in to replace, a blank card, but that he's not particularly excited about, right?
Right. But it is very useful here, given that there's that Academy Ruins on top.
So, of note, Luis can't cast Whir of Invention next turn. He's just like a little bit short in every direction.
Yeah, he needs an artifact to have the Metalcraft for that Mox Opal to give him the 3rd blue source. He could choose to just keep the Academy Ruins in hand until he finds maybe a hand disruption spell for the Molten Rain.
Yeah, I'll take Stirrings.
He's going to take Ancient Stirrings.
Is that
Kind
bad?
of bank on him not being able to cast it for a turn or 2.
Back for 2.
And here's where, again, Lantern of Insight cuts both ways. Gerry, I think, may have made a different play if he knew that Luis was drawing a blue source.
And Luis did decide to play the Academy Ruins anyways. He can't actually cast it. So
Well, I think that Luis would actually rather get Academy Ruins Molten Rain and be able to cast Whir next turn.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of
Because
sense.
I think Gerry might actually go after
A blue source.
the Botanical Sanctum or the Spider of Industry. Because then he knows that Luis's next turn is just go, like
Yeah.
Welding Jar go.
Yeah, Gerry was really excited because I think he was initially eyeballing that Academy Ruins, but now on second thought, he might want to actually just go for either the Spire of Industry here.
Molten Rain Spire, get a token.
Yeah, that's exactly what he does, Paul. He's going to fire off that Molten Rain he was kind of fake excited about, but it looks like it might do some work for him. That puts Luis Salvatto another step away from casting Whir of Invention.
And Luis is very far away now.
Yeah.
I guess he has a Welding Jar, so he still needs. I guess he can just draw a blue source here.
Right.
He really needs one soon.
There it is. Now, he's not getting that till next turn, but that's business. Now, off the top of the library, though, for Thompson, no, he's going to shuffle.
Yeah, he does not need the backup Bedlam Reveler, given he has one in hand.
Sure.
We're in a position now where if Gerry doesn't find a way to disrupt Luis, next turn he's going to get to Whir
For
Ensnaring
bridge.
and be able to have a Welding Jar and play to back it up, as well as an Academy Ruin. So Gerry really needs to spike Artifact Removal or Molten Rain here.
Should I have taken the Whir?
And look at that. You hear Gerry say, should I have taken the Whir? Like, thinking back to maybe, look, were you inevitably going to be able to cast it and I needed to just handle that situation?
I have Reveler,
Yeah, I mean, Gerry still does have that Bedlam Reveler, and after sideboard, he has the 2 copies of Wear and Tear as well. So now he has 5 cards he can draw that actually can deal with an artifact that's on the battlefield. Although Luis Salvatto has that Welding Jar in play to protect the Ensnaring Bridge. But Luis currently can't really manipulate draws very well currently because he doesn't have a Mill Rock. I think he does have a Mishra's Bauble, which gives him some information, but... Oh, no, I guess there's a Lantern in play. That wouldn't do anything.
By the way, Gerry Thompson took out, looks like 11 cards from his main deck.
Go.
Yeah, he's probably going to want to tap that Sacred Foundry, but other than that, this play is good.
Okay, another land off the top of the library here for Salvatto, but...
So how many spells in the graveyard? 4?
Now 4.
Sure.
And now Salvatto with last card in hand, Whir of Invention. He can go search up that bridge. Is the window closing on Gerry Thompson here?
I think so. I mean, during Gerry Thompson's combat step, I think Luis Salvatto does need to fire off that Word of Invention for that ensnaring bridge, and Gerry needs to find an answer soon. But with the welding jar too, Gerry needs to find 2 removal effects for that ensnaring bridge.
Whew, that is going to be a tall order. Let's see what he finds.
Oh, nothing.
Thoughtseize Lingering Souls Mountain for Thompson. Luis Salvatto is getting very close to a Pro Tour trophy here. He needed Gerry to brick on that Bedlam Reveler, and Gerry did.
Wow.
And here it is. Word of Invention for 3 with a lantern. Now, he doesn't have a mill rock yet.
But Gerry has pretty much no cards that actually matter anymore currently, and needs to find 2 answers for that ensnaring bridge.
With a land coming.
And
Right.
Luis Salvatto has way more cards that are relevant in this situation than Gerry does. Gerry has 5 artifact removal spells, plus any copies of Reveler and Faithless Looting left.
No.
Luis Salvatto has all the mill rocks, and he can also use Academy Ruins plus Lantern of Insight if he really needs to just keep shuffling Gerry's library to keep him off of something critical. So I think Luis Salvatto's in very good shape here.
And this Lantern of Insight deck that started back in GP Oklahoma City a few years ago has gained popularity and, in fact, gotten better over that time frame.
Yes.
And somehow that card, Lantern of Insight, is on the verge of being in a deck that wins the Pro Tour?
Okay. Liliana isn't the worst here. If Gerry draws a Liliana, he can continue ticking it up and then actually use the ultimate to get rid of
knock
half
out
of
a bunch of
Luis's
permanents.
permanents.
Or more.
Or more.
Can separate a bridge and everything else.
Yeah.
I think that there's a good chance that Luis ends up wanting to sacrifice Lantern of Insight to make sure that Gerry shuffles his library here, because that way he can also just use Academy Runes again on upkeep, just like he did last time, and end up in a spot where he just doesn't waste his draw step.
Yeah. Here we go.
Go.
Oh, he's shuffling himself first.
Looks like he didn't want to find that Mox Opal.
Yeah.
What's my chance?
No, no. It's fair.
No, I know. Put a number on it.
He just wants to run the numbers here. So if this is a mill rock,
Gerry's like 10% to win this game, maybe?
yeah, not very high. That is not going to get it done.
Yeah, he asked Luis what his chances were, and Luis said, look, you're not dead.
Well, Gerry does know he's not dead, but he's not.
Yes.
Then is he now going to Lantern Gerry?
Yes, he is.
So, Gerry, the Lantern Academy Runes lock is much less secure than the Codex Shredder one because you don't draw any cards.
Yeah.
So, Gerry has to hit here. Then if Luis shuffles him again, Gerry has to hit again. But if he does, he gets rid of the welding jar.
He has a few decent draws here. Faithless Looting would be pretty strong, along with the artifact removal effects and even a Bedlam Reveler. So there are a lot of cards Gerry can draw that actually could have an impact here. Here it is.
Surgical Extraction.
This is my turn, pass the turn.
I think you let him draw Surgical because even if he Surgical's Lantern, you have one in play.
And with no bridges in the graveyard, Surgical can't take that out of play and leave Gerry with the out of finding just one way to remove a bridge and get the kill.
And
so that's not going to get the job done here for Thompson.
Yeah, so I think Luis might just look to draw this Inquisition of Kozilek and just kind of force the action with the Surgical Extraction.
And he knows Gerry's bricking next turn off his own Inquisition.
It's kind of brutal.
Thompson surveys the scene, doesn't like what he sees. Salvatto patiently waits for Gerry's decision. Gerry just says, go.
Okay. I may have some effects in your draw step.
Draw is okay, but I might do something in your draw step, he says.
And he doesn't really want to shuffle Luis's deck here because
He's
Luis
drawing
has a land on top.
Yeah.
Just this match. Surgical, your words, get a token.
My word, affiliation.
Yeah.
So he's going to play Surgical on Whir of Invention.
It reduces the number of relevant hits in Luis's deck, but is certainly far from devastating.
Yeah. He still has cards like the Ancient Stirrings, although I guess he only has 2 copies of that left. And of course, the 6 mill rocks that are likely still in his deck.
What you see Gerry doing now is taking advantage of the fact that he gets to look through his whole library to see, well, what did you bring in? What do your sideboard plan look like? What are the cards I need to care about at this point? Well, Whir of Invention.
And Luis still has to fire off that Inquisition because that Ensnaring Bridge needs him to be hellbent here. No cards in hand.
Yeah, Gerry certainly has lethal 1/1s, doesn't he?
There's a lot of 1/1s on the board.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's the Ancient Stirrings.
Inquisition you, take away a Thoughtseize. Neither of those cards doing much here, but the key is that Luis is back down to 0 cards in hand. Another Surgical Extraction.
Did Luis leave Witchbane Orb in?
Yep.
He did. He could Ancient Stirrings into Witchbane Orb here and
Can he play it?
and miss and not be able to play anything, but he would have to hit 4 cards he couldn't take. I guess he could opt. I guess he could opt not to take it.
Right.
Look, we're drawing slim here when this is the sort of the lines we're going down.
Yeah, that is fair.
Codex Shredder is going to make this very difficult for Gerry to win.
And does he even care about Surgical at this point?
I would imagine not.
The chances. Pass it to
Mana for that.
sharpen.
Yeah, he just let him draw it.
Okay.
There's Blood Moon, but Gerry's already taken out the Whir of Inventions. Blood Moon would knock down the Academy Ruins. And
The worst cards.
yeah, Gerry's not happy about his draw steps.
The one thing that Blood Moon does mean is that Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas, could be stuck in Luis's hand. So there's a chance he wants to mill Blood Moon because of that. But he can also mill his own Tezzerets too, because Lantern gives you full control over both players' deck.
Grafdigger's Cage, not the worst option, because now Luis Salvatto can safely put copies of Faithless Looting in Gerry Thompson's graveyard without having to worry about the flashback.
Gerry's actually paused him here and is considering, I think, using that Surgical. We're still in his upkeep, in Salvatto's upkeep, that is.
Surgical something.
Hasn't decided. Something has been called.
Gerry's building his own Lantern control deck with Surgical Extractions.
Not a lot of cards here that really matter.
Targeting position.
Oh, geez.
And he's doing this just to shuffle
Just to
Luis Salvatto's
shuffle.
deck.
So if I draw a playable card and then you find it in position, that seems kind of bad for me. I'm not sure I'm actually supposed to leave these or not.
He's actually considering not exiling the ones in the library, thinking to himself, well, these aren't great draws for you anyway, because Salvatto's effectively forced to cast them. He did end up taking them away. Ooh, got an island on top of the library.
This point.
And so the reason why Luis Salvatto says that is actually pretty good. Luis, you mentioned that Tezzeret is a card that could potentially be stranded in Luis's hand. But now that he drew that basic island in conjunction with that Mox Opal, even if he draws Tezzeret, he can play it.
Wow.
Also, by casting Blood Moon, Gerry makes it so he can't cast the Tear part of Wear Tear, which doesn't matter right now, but it is funny that he actually cuts off spells in his own deck.
Right.
Yeah, Gerry didn't seem to be super thrilled with the Blood Moon there.
Yep.
Luis Salvatto does have one opportunity to use the Academy Ruins.
So Salvatto still hanging on to the combo here, Ensnaring Bridge, 1 Codex Shredder, 1 Lantern of Insight. And so far, that's all he's needed to keep Gerry Thompson and his army of tokens at bay. Gerry needs a window of 1 attack step through that bridge to kill Luis Salvatto, and it's going to be very difficult for him to find it from here.
Done.
Fulminator Mage, go.
And Luis continuing to sculpt his draws here, and that's another Codex Shredder.
And that's another step towards a Pro Tour trophy.
Save it for a turn, right?
Sure.
Jerry's having some fun with Luis here, teasing him a little.
Some lantern coaching here on the
Yeah,
other
he said
side.
you could wait a turn, right?
Yeah, right. You don't need to do it right now. Come on.
What's the rush?
Yeah.
No?
Not even close. No.
No? Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure. Yeah, you can probably do something.
Ah. Dropped an otter. That's not going to help.
Yeah. At this point, it is incredibly unlikely for Gerry Thompson to come back from
Yeah,
this.
this is the lock that these players go for, is the 2 mill rocks. That the second one really makes it almost impossible for your opponent to come back once you know what they're going to draw and once they can't attack you.
Because that means your opponents draw like 4 good cards in a row because you get to use them, untap, and use them again if you need to.
Oh, wait. Okay, yeah. If Luis actually finds 2 lands,
he would
have died. Oh,
he
that
would
was
have
risky.
died. Oh, boy.
He would have had
actually-
to find a lot of lands in a row
Yeah,
because he had another Codex Shredder and a Lantern of Insight. But yes,
yeah.
it certainly could have happened.
But yeah, he didn't necessarily need to use that bubble there.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a Liliana of the Veil. That's one that
Okay.
Salvatto actually
Does
cares
he have
about here.
back to back? Okay, that's a Faithless,
Faithless Looting's a
Looting.
card that Salvatto would prefer Gerry to
He
not
wants a
draw.
Pixis. We've seen Gerry come back from some very difficult spots already in this top 8. Can this Faithless Looting get him there?
Remember, the Codex Shredders mill you. Faithless Looting would go into the graveyard, and Salvatto can't really do much about it there.
Yeah, and he can't really use the Lantern. In a lot of situations, you could use the Lantern to shuffle your opponent's deck and get it back with the ruins, but of course that Blood Moon is on the battlefield.
Best Pro Tour finals ever.
Gerry kind of making light of the fact that we have 2 cards that are often considered unfun, Blood Moon and Ensnaring Bridge, and there's Pixis of
finds the
Pandemonium.
Pixis,
He
and
finds
this should lock it up.
what this has to be it for Luis Salvatto. A 3-0 victory in the Pro Tour Finals with Lantern control over a great player, and Gerry Thompson
Still
is
live.
afoot.
I'm still live.
Oh,
Ooh.
Jerry's having fun now.
here we go. Do we have another action
needs
card here?
more
Here we
action.
go.
Live.
Well,
Kind of.
That's a cycler. Wow, Gerry making it really interesting here.
Draw step.
Sure.
That is
he
effectively a
have it
card
here?
in hand.
Oh,
I have this one.
I know.
Jerry's.
Still at like running lootings, right?
What?
I can still hit running lootings. You
Yes,
like
yes,
pick this one. I'm no mathematician. But
yeah. This was Jerry's kind of one window,
Okay.
but given that
This
there's a
seemed
black
to be
leaf
it,
on
huh?
top, yeah.
is this target player draws a card? Go.
It is not.
Yes.
I'll keep draw.
Yep.
And Salvatto can
Okay.
breathe a little bit of relief. And there's
Okay.
Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas.
which he can cast.
Which he can cast because he found that basic island.
Right, you mentioned that before, Paul, and you know we heard Salvatto say it. I actually thought he was saying it in jest, but he was serious. Because these are the problems, right? You can get a card stuck in your hand and you could lose the next turn.
Oh, and that's another Ensnaring Bridge.
Wow, that is going to make it effectively impossible for Gerry Thompson to win.
Well, it's actually going to do 16 damage next turn off the Tezzeret ultimate.
Absolutely, and guess what? Gerry Thompson's
Is
at
that
16
16?
life.
Are we gonna see a victory via Tezzeret Ultimate?
We absolutely
so.
are. That is exactly what's going to happen here. Pro Tour Finals decided by an ultimated Planeswalker.
Going off.
Gerry's going through the motions,
That's lethal, man.
counted up the artifacts, and says, that's enough to kill me. Luis Salvatto is your champion. Congratulations. He came back and he won 3-0 over Gerry Thompson in the finals. Fantastic work for Luis Salvatto. He puts his hands in the air.
Excellent.
And darn it, he should. This is his second Pro Tour top 8. He ended up finishing in 8th place at Pro Tour Shadows over Innistrad, but he was not going to be denied this time. And you can see his teammates from Team Haveruya Latin coming out to congratulate him. And he's going to be bringing that trophy with him back home to Argentina. Congratulations, Luis Salvatto.
Don't worry, I knew you meant.
By the way, we just hit the airwaves just hit the viewing area. That's why you heard that round of applause. There's a little bit of a delay here in the building.
So LSV is now a 2-time Pro Tour champion.
In a manner of speaking, that is true.
One each, indeed. Oh boy, Lantern Control wins the Pro Tour. I never thought that I would be saying those words here from the booth, you guys. I'm kind of in a little bit of shock about it. I remember when the deck came out, and now all of a sudden the thing has won the Pro Tour. What's your initial thoughts on that?
Well, I think that there might be more people sleeving up Lanterns of Insight, but the deck's hard to play. So, you know, just because it won the Pro Tour does not mean it's something you should take lightly. That said, as long as people are willing to battle with it, I mean, it's going to make for interesting times.
That's right. I mean, you've played this deck a lot. Did you think that it was on the power level to actually take an event like this down?
Well, you know, when I first saw the deck, it was Zach Elsick winning Grand Prix Oklahoma City. And when I first looked at it, I'm like, how do these collections of cards work? This is just looks like cards from my uncommon binder, not even like necessarily rare cards. And then like it slowly got additions, right? You got Inventor's Fair, Word of Invention, and that firmly put it into a tier 1.
Mostly invention-based cards.
Yeah, right. And it really put it into kind of the tier 1 status. But as you saw, it is a really difficult deck to play, and it makes you play a different style of Magic. And also, it's an artifact-based deck. If people really want to beat this, they can.
Yeah. Wow. Incredible stuff. Thank you so much for letting us bring you coverage of the finals. Zakama over here, the three-headed dinosaur. We're signing off, though, from the booth. Let's head back over to the news desk.
Luis Salvatto of Argentina is your Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan champion. Simon Gertzen here, Maria Bartholdi, your host Rich Hagen, saying, Simon, that was an astonishing performance by someone who you never get a turn off with Lantern Control. You never get to just go on autopilot for 5-10 minutes here and there. And through 3 days, 19 rounds, 3 out of 5 today, Luis Salvatto made that deck look fantastic.
Yeah, he made it look fantastic. He made it look like it's easy not to draw any matches. He made it look easy to control every single one of your opponent's draw steps, basically. And when you're done with that, you're also trying to maximize your own outs of hitting the right cards. This deck is a puzzle to play, and Luis Salvatto just mastered it.
You know, I have a friend who recently picked up the deck, and she said, I love this deck because it is like figuring out a puzzle. How do I make all of these pieces work together to keep my opponent from doing what they want to do, while at the same time making sure I'm doing what I want to do?
Yeah, certainly as a caveat, if you are thinking of picking that up, the guys said it there in the booth. They said, look, it's not an easy deck to play. 7 of the 9 players who chose Lantern for this tournament are phenomenally good Magic players. Brian Brown-Dewin, former world champion. Sam Black, a finalist at a modern Pro Tour. Piotr Glagowski, who everyone knew was going to play Lantern Control. That these were very, very good players, and Luis Salvatto claims the title. But Maria, let's go back to the start of the day. How did we arrive at Luis Salvatto claiming the title?
All right, well, we've certainly had a wonderful day here at our top 8 Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan. Let's take a look at our top 8 bracket. The first match we saw was Ken Yukihiro on Black-Red Hollow One versus Reed Duke, who is playing Obzon, and that was an explosive match, Simon. We saw 2 turn 1 Hollow Ones in 2 different games.
Yeah, that definitely got our blood pumping there. I didn't run the numbers. I did ask Frank to do that for us, though. What are the chances of having multiple Hollow Ones on turn 1?
Oh, that's a great question.
I understand, you know, turn 2, turn 3, you actually chain some of these spells together. But just like that, 8 power, 12 power, that's amazing.
It's kind of a flavor fail, though, isn't it? Because honestly, 2 of those on turn 1, I mean, a hollow victory isn't hollow by any stretch of the imagination. That's exactly what you want to happen.
Yeah, and they hit pretty hard for not having much substance.
Yeah, yes. So there's quite a lot wrong with that deck anyway. But quite seriously, I think a good choice for the weekend. How about next weekend? Black-Red Hollow One.
Looking at the decks of this top 8, and of course the top 8 decks get the most exposure, so we can expect them to do to be well represented. I like Black-Red Hollow one still. You have to be willing to accept that it has a big random component. I thought about it myself. Would I want to play this at a Team Trios constructed GP? Do I want to cast Goblin Lore and see my Hollow ones in the graveyard?
And kind of cross your fingers?
Well, what else are you going to do? I mean, we saw Ken Yukihiro smiling a lot, which is great. You have to enjoy every moment with this deck, and you cannot let these random elements destroy you mentally.
Is it the Charbelcher of Modern? Is that the sort of equivalent?
I think it's better and more consistent.
Okay.
But I think it is more of a one-trick pony than other decks.
All right, on we go.
All right, our next match was our champion, Luis Salvatto, versus Jan-Emmanuel Depras, playing Traverse Shadow. And Traverse Shadow put up more of a fight against Lantern Control. It did win 2 games, but Salvatto was able to dodge some ancient grudges there to take the match.
In the end, I think Depras and his teammates, they knew Lantern was a thing. They had ancient grudges, but 2 of them, there is Pixels of Pandemonium after all. What I did love was Hostage Taker, because every
yes, that was great.
so you sit there with an ensnaring bridge and 3 welding jars, and you're thinking, traverse the Overworld. That's not a threat, because that's what the Lantern Deck's pilot has to assess. Is this card ultimately going to help my opponent get out of the lock? And suddenly you traverse the Overworld, a Hostage Taker, exile the bridge, and Welding Jar doesn't even save it.
Well, plenty more chat still to come, but first we've got some hardware to give away. Why don't we head over to the feature match area one last time here in Bilbao. It's time for the feature presentation.
Welcome to the feature match area here in Bilbao, Spain. It is time to honor our champion from Argentina, Luis Salvatto. Luis, congratulations. What's going through your mind right now?
I don't even know what's happening, so give me an hour at least. It's insane.
I'm going to give you about 30 seconds here. You're not getting it that easy. So down the stretch, you had some pretty tough matches in the top 8, but that last one went pretty smoothly for you, 3-0.
Yeah, the thing, I thought it was a bad matchup because he has a lot of disruption and discards and destroy artifact spells, but I didn't realize that he never put pressure on me. So if he let me draw my spells, I win the game, and that was happening. The first 2 games was too easy, and the third one was a little more difficult, but still it was a good matchup after all.
So when it came time to choose what deck you wanted to play for the tournament here, you know, we haven't had a modern PT in a little while. You decided to sleeve up Lantern. Have you been playing that deck for a while? What was your thought decision there?
Well, the history is I started to play Lantern like 3 months ago, and learning the deck, and I watched the streams and started to become better with the deck. And in one point, I realized the deck was too powerful, like insane powerful, that I thought they will ban something or release a new card to deal with Lantern because it's extremely powerful. And I told to a lot of my friends, like Talai and the guys from my team, that the deck was busted. And I don't know if they don't believe me or if they didn't realize that, but nobody started to play it, and then I quit because I thought it was nonsense to spend my time. I started to play Absan, and with no success at all, and bring an Absan deck, and then Willie Edel told me it was a bad choice, so I moved to another good deck, Egg-Rack, but yes. And start to get the cards and something else. And in one point, like 4 days ago, Pedro Carvalho was playing Lantern against one of our teammates. And he offered to me to play the deck because he saw me watching the game. And I play a few games, and he told me, no man, you should play this deck for sure. The Egg Racks is a shit, so play this. Sorry, the 8 rack is bad. And play this, I will play Storm. And 3 days ago, I decided the deck and.
Wow, that decision certainly paid off for you here. Now you're going to be taking this trophy and everything back home with you. Is there anybody that you want to thank that helped get you here?
Well, in first instance to Pedro, because without him I will play other deck.
All right, here's the rest of the team.
To all my team, there's a lot, they are not here. And all the people from Argentina and Latin America, they always support me and send me good messages, always rooting for me. Even people in every place of the world, it's always good vibes with me. And then in Argentina, to my family, my girlfriend, and to my dad that is in the sky, and he's so proud of me.
Congratulations, we're all proud of you. Your champion for Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, Luis Salvatto.